In the beginning of this movie, we see the army of Helium in blue capes battling the army of Zoga. In red capes, the general of Zoga named Sabin is approached by three men who claim to be messengers of God called Thorn. The Thorn's leader, Matai Sheg, gives him a mysterious blue weapon and tells him that he has been chosen by the goddess to receive it. The Thorns have decided to help Zodega in the war. They possess control over a mysterious blue light called the Ninth Ray, which makes them stronger than other living creatures on Barum. The scene cuts to New York City in 1881. A man named Edgar was summoned by his uncle named John Carter to New York City. When Edgar drops at the station, he is greeted by John's butler who takes him to John's estate. As it turns out, John is a wealthy man and a former Confederate Army captain. John's lawyer sadly informs Edgar of John's sudden death. John has left all of his numerous wealth to Edgar. The lawyer then takes a surprised Edgar to John's mausoleum where his body is being preserved. But strangely, the door of the mausoleum only opens from the inside. Later, the lawyer hands Edgar a personal diary of John, which John wanted only Edgar to have. When the lawyer leaves, he starts reading it. It begins by mentioning that Edgar was the only one who believed John's wild stories when he was little. So it only feels right to tell this story to Edgar. The story starts in Arizona after the Civil War. John Carter is a former captain in the Confederate Army who currently looks for gold in caves. Powell is a Union colonel who wants John to help his U.S. cavalry soldiers against the Apache. So he abducts him and tries drafting him as a. However, John doesn't want to fight as a soldier anymore. After several failed attempts of running away, he manages to escape. By knocking a guard out and stealing the colonel's horse, the colonel and his men pursue him not far away. They come across a mounted Apache war band. The colonel and the men get into a shootout with the people. John tries running away amid the chaos, but the colonel gets injured in the fight. He helps the colonel out of pity and brings him near a cave. The cave is new to John as he has never come here to search for it. He goes inside, lights a match, and is beyond surprised to see lots of gold embedded in the roof of the cave. However, just then a man behind him appears out of nowhere. The man is one of the Thorns we saw at the beginning of the movie. The colonel alerts John, who gets into a fight with a strange man. He shoots the man, making him fall to the ground. When John goes near him, he hears the man say Barum while looking at a strange medallion in his hands. John picks up the medallion and repeats the word Barum. Suddenly, a bright blue light flashes out of Locke. When John opens his eyes again, he is in a strange desert. He gets up and tries walking, but falls in every step. It seems as though he can float. Medea confused. He practices walking in the new environment. As he walks, he reaches a hill nearby where he sees several eggs hatching. Just then a large group of green creatures with 6 limbs of pure riding on massive animals, the leader attacks him, making John take a huge leap. The rest start firing at John, but stop when their leader asks them to. The creature speaks in a different language and introduces himself as Tushtarka. John introduces himself as John Carter from Virginia, but the creatures decipher that his name is Virginia. Tars asks John to jump as he did before, but he denies it and attacks him. The creatures injure John and hold him hostage as they talked. We get to know that their kind is called Fars elsewhere on the same planet. The princess of the city of Helium, Deja, practices presenting a weapon she has designed to her father, the king of Helium. Helium is at war with another city called the Zoga and is about to lose because of Thorns being on Zo. Deja has figured out the secret of the Ninth Ray used by the Zoga to fight the war. However, when she shows her weapon to the king, a man secretly causes a malfunction, causing it to explode the king of Zoga. Saturn wants to marry Deja for the war to end, but she is extremely against it. If Savon marries her, he will be the Prince of Helium and will have the power to rule all of Barum. Meanwhile, the Thats take John to their city and put him with the newly born infant. At night, a female named Sola feeds John a liquid, after which he can understand the language of Thats. The following day, the Thats ordered John to jump high in front of everyone. John notices that the medallion is with Tars, and without it, he cannot go back home. Just then, 2 battleships appear in the sky. The Helium and the Zoga are battling each other. The war is entertainment to the Thats, who bet on who will win. We see Princess Deja fighting in the ships. She tries to control the ship but falls off it in the process. John, using his newfound jumping powers, saves the princess. The FARC start cheering for John, who is now fighting the Zodega soldiers. Along with Deja, John manages to change the course of the fight, making the Helium win, but their ship crashes as well. Deja and John are with the Thats. Tars are impressed by John's abilities and make him his right-hand man. John is reluctant to the idea but doesn't disagree. At night, Deja and John talk and Deja reveals to John that they're on Mars, which is called Baraman there. John is surprised and doesn't believe her. He tells her that he is from the Earth. Deja too finds it hard to believe because of his thicker bone density in the planet's low gravity. Carter has incredible strength and can leap high. Deja then takes him to the Fars temple where no humans are allowed to go. She hopes that the temple has a way to know how people can travel through the world. As John did, the kind female FARC Sola goes behind them, begging them to stop. Deja shows John the statue of the goddess Isis and reads some markings engraved on it. However, the three of them are soon arrested by the Thats and sentenced to death for entering the temple. Tars asks everyone to leave him alone with the prisoners in the cell in order to cut John's hands off when they are alone. He reveals that he is Sola's father and doesn't want them to die. At the hands of the Thats, he hands John his medallion and asks him to go to the rivers to solve the mystery of the goddess Isis and get back to his world. When the Fars look into the room after some time, they see that Tars has betrayed them. Tars' enemy Tall Halls take charge and declare themselves the new leader. Then we see John, Deja and Sola heading to the river. Deja is leading the way. However, Sola tells John that she is leading them toward the city of Helium instead of the river. John confronts her about it, and it turns out that she was taking him to her city to use him as a soldier in the war. Disappointed, John asks Sola to lead the way and leaves the princess there. Deja insists that she only did it because she doesn't want to marry Sab. He asks her to accompany him to the river with no other way out. She agrees. The three sail through the river of ISS and reaches a massive inverted pyramid. John and Deja go on top of it and see strange blue energy forming on the ground. Deja realizes that this is the power of the ninth ray that she had made her weapon. They also realize that Carter's appearance on Mars is likely due to the transmission of a copy of himself from Earth to Mars with the help of the ninth ray. Just then an army of war approaches, led by Mattai Shag, the leader of the Thorns. John bravely tells Deja and Sola to run away and fights the army of wars himself. The King of Helium sends his army to John's aid, who defeats the Warhols and saves him. They take an injured John to Helium. Deja reaches her home and meets her father. She is surprised to see the king of Zodega, Sab. Then there he is, come with no weapon and soldiers, to ask Deja to marry him and end the war. Deja doesn't have any other way to stop the war, so she reluctantly agrees to marry him. In the following scene, we see John resting in a chamber in Helium Palace. A soldier appointed by Deja fetches him and secretly takes him to her. Deja asks John to go back to his home using the medallion. When the guards enter her chamber, John disappears. Deja thinks that he went back to Earth, but John is hiding actually from the soldiers. When they leave, he tries going outside but is soon caught by Mattai Shag. John is surprised by Mattai. She's the ability to change into any creature around him. The whole city is preparing for the wedding of Sab. Then in Mattai Shah binds John to himself with the help of a technology developed by the ninth ray. John is unable to move his body on his will. Mattai Shah seems to be controlling him with his wrist. Mattai Shah then reveals to him that Sab then is planning to kill Deja and invade Helium after the marriage. They then took his side in the war because Sab then was the easiest to manipulate. But Mattai, her real aim is to rule all of Baram through Sab. Then Mattai is about to kill John when an alien dog John had befriended earlier comes to his rescue. It bites off Mattai Shan's wrist device, letting John free. He heads to a flying craft and flies away to stop Deja from marrying Sab. However, John doesn't know how to control the aircraft and crash lands near the Thats territory and held captive with beaten Tars. Tall Hais, who is now the leader of the Thats, puts John and Tars with massive beasts called the White Ape. John somehow manages to capture the apes in front of the whole FARC population. He then invites Tall Hayes to fight him and defeats him in one go. Everyone cheers for John, who is now the new leader of the Thats. He then persuades them to help him fight the Zoga, the army of Fars, and John makes their way to Deja and Isebifan's wedding ceremony. John reaches there just in time to stop the wedding. Seeing him sad then tries to kill Deja, but John stops him just in time. A war between the soldiers of the two cities erupts again. However, the That's is on the side of Helium now. The Zoga soon loses, but Mattai Sheg manages to escape with John's medallion. John plans to live on Mars as Deja's husband, so he doesn't bother to look for the medallion. He and Deja got married and the crowd cheers for them. He is now the Prince of Helium. The following morning, John and Deja are on a balcony. Deja leaves John outside and goes into the room when Mattai Shah appears. John tried to fight him, but he manages to use the medallion to send John back to Earth. When John wakes up, he is covered in dust and his beard has grown long. He is in the same cave and looks towards Colonel Powell to see his remains, suggesting that a long time has passed on the Earth while he was on Mars. He looks around for a medallion but doesn't find it. He has no way to go back. The gold embedded in the cave makes him wealthy. He knows that there are more medallions on Earth. He starts a mining corporation and searches for the medallion for the next 10. Until one day he finds one on a site. John is delighted, but he knows that the thirds have been keeping an eye on him. All this. His body on Earth must be protected when he goes to Mars because any harm on it will cause him to die on both planets. That is why his mausoleum only opens from the inside. He had orchestrated his death to return back to Mars. John writes in the diary that he wants Edgar to protect his mausoleum from the ferns. In a turn of event, Edgar is in shock. After reading the diary, he goes out to the mausoleum and tries opening it with a secret password, which turns out to be the name John called Edgar when he was a kid. As the doors to the mausoleum opened, Orr approaches. He had been spying on Edgar, waiting to kill John. However, before he can harm Edgar, someone from behind knocks him out. Edgar is beyond surprised to see his uncle in front of him. John takes the Thorn's medallion. As it turns out, he had never found the medallion. All this, including his death, was fake to attract a Thorn and acquire his medallion. John then asks Edgar to protect his mausoleum from now onwards and goes inside it. He lies on the bed with the medallion and says the chanting that will take him back to Mars. Thank you for watching and kindly subscribe for more exciting movies.